Hey everyone, rudyxx here to talk about another RPGalooza game, Tales of Berseria. For those of you that don't know, RPGalooza is a project I started involving playing through a huge list of RPG titles, ranging from Western style to Japanese. And while I'm not a huge RPG connoisseur, I do like to dabble in them every now and then, so hopefully I can provide for you a more modern day gamer's look at my experiences with them. So with that out of the way, on to Tales of Berseria. I guess actually let me go into a little bit on how I came about playing Tales of Berseria. I actually started Tales of Zestiria a few years ago, and after about 7 or so hours of unenjoyment, I gave up on the game and kind of lost any interest in playing Berseria. Since Zestiria and Berseria were linked, I wanted to play through Zestiria before starting Berseria, so I could better experience the links between the two games as was intended by their release order, which obviously didn't really happen, and somewhat recently I finally kind of accepted that it just wasn't going to happen. Zestiria was just such an awful experience for me, and if I ever wanted to play Berseria, I may as well just play Berseria and ignore the fact that it shares any relationship to Zestiria. So with that, I started up Berseria, but with incredibly low expectations, which actually played pretty strongly to my enjoyment of the game, as it actually ended up being a pretty decent game overall. The combat wasn't anything special, but it was definitely a huge step in a direction that was more enjoyable and less complicated than Zestiria. For the most part, I just strategically spammed 2 buttons, but it was engaging enough that I had to be strategical about button mashing instead of just mashing wildly and hoping for the best. The characters were all fairly interesting, and the interactions between them actually kept my attention a lot better than most of the Tales games in general. I still never had any other desire to play as anyone else besides Velvet. However, because the characters were all interesting, I guess like with a lot of the Tales games, I typically just ignore the skits altogether. But I actually went out of my way to watch all the ones I came across in Berseria, so for me that's pretty huge. And while the story was pretty generic at times, the characters were animated enough that I kept up with it anyways, despite a lot of the things being incredibly predictable. Another part of the game I liked was the music. In general, I kept getting Tales of Destiny vibes from it, but considering the composer for most of the Tales games is Sakuraba, it's honestly not surprising that the music would give me similar vibes. Although despite the similarities that did exist to various Tales games, it honestly never felt like a Tales of game to me at all. There was a serious lack of certain themes and ideas that kind of carry over between the games in the series that I've actually played. And so it just felt like a generic RPG that had the Tales of logo tagged on for sales. I think for a Tales game it was lacking, but if I kind of detach it from its name, then it did a pretty good job. So for RPGalooza, I gave it a score of 7 out of 10. It definitely had some major flaws, but I think my experience with it was good enough that I never felt like I was forcing myself to play it or do anything specifically, and at no point did anything truly feel like a chore, which is really good because a lot of RPGs kind of like go into that state where sometimes grinding or other stuff just becomes a chore. So anyways, overall my experience with Berseria was pretty good. If you enjoyed this video and would like to look forward to many more RPG reviews in the future, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're interested in seeing me actually play through a variety of games in real time, make sure you follow my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/rudyxx. Thanks for watching and see you next time.